This article is from Bounding Into Comics. After Vanity Fair claimed the Marvels clocked in with a $130 million budget, Forbes now shares the movie's budget is an enormous $274 million. How? Vanity Fair originally reported that the film's production budget clocked in at $130 million in their most recent expose about the film's director Nia DaCosta. However, Vanity Fair has since updated their article and removed any mention of the movie's production budget. Later in the Bounding Into Comics article, it says, over at We Got This Covered, Danny Peterson speculated the lower budget meant the movie is on a smaller scale and thus doesn't need as large of a budget. He also claimed that the small budget could have been because Jude Law and Annette Bening were not returning for this film. Finally, he offered that the film is set in the present, so there's no need to use expensive CGI to digitally de-age Samuel L. Jackson. I'll say that I personally think a sequel to Captain Marvel should never have been made because the first one shouldn't have been made in the first place. But it did benefit from being an appetizer movie of sorts for Avengers Endgame, and so it made a lot of money as a result. So a sequel was sort of inevitable, but it should definitely have been made on a smaller budget than its predecessor. $130 million is probably reasonable enough. Maybe $100 million would have been better. I mean, how much money do these superhero movies actually need these days? Unfortunately, it seems the film was a lot more expensive than $130 million. Financial analyst Valiant Renegade even called the $130 million budget into question, believing it was based off an earlier report from Forbes in April that claimed the budget was $130 million after just 2 months of filming. He stated the reality is that Disney spent for pre-production and the first roughly 60 days of principal photography for the Marvels $130 million, according to the financial returns reported by Caroline Reed, who we frequently cite here on Valiant Renegade. That means that this $130 million is probably less than half of the final spend on the film. Less than half. And of course, that's if they actually shot the film all the way through one time and were happy with it. But as is the case with Marvel Cinematic Universe films, there were tons and tons of massive reshoots for this film. I promise you, the final spend for the Marvels is going to be at or very near $300 million, if not more, he said. If not more! Unbelievable. I mean, if you look at the trailers, I mean, can anyone seriously tell me that they can see $300 million worth of a movie on screen? And to be fair, I think after a certain point, you can't. I mean, can you really see the difference between a $200 million movie and a $300 million movie? I can't. I just think these budgets in Hollywood they're just so wasteful. They're ridiculous. And these kind of studios, clearly they have money to burn. I think, to be honest, this is money that could be much, much better spent helping homeless people or investing in small businesses. Just my 2 cents. So later in the article, it says Valiant Renegade would also be quickly vindicated as Forbes' Caroline Reed dropped a new report claiming the budget is actually upwards of $274 million. This latest report from Forbes states the blockbuster budget is disclosed in company filings released yesterday by the Disney subsidiary which made the movie. They show that over the 2-year period from the incorporation of the company to September 30th, 2022, it spent $274.8 million and banked a $55 million subsidy from the government of the United Kingdom, where the movie was made. This brought its net spending down to $219.8 million. However, it's likely this is not even the final production budget, as the production company, incorporated in the United Kingdom, will likely continue to report its financial dealings for a number of years to come, as we've seen with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Avengers Endgame, and other Disney productions filmed in the United Kingdom. So, as expected, the Marvels faces an uphill battle just to break even, given how expensive it is. And take a look at some of these images from the film. I mean, look at the low quality of the costumes. I've noticed this actually in some recent superhero movies. The costumes these days just look awful. I mean, it's like something from an actual costume shop. They look cheap. Look at those wrinkles in the outfit. Standards really have slipped in this genre, haven't they? I'll never forget. Do you remember the scene in The Dark Knight Rises? The first scene where Batman shows up. Remember the incredible quality and detail of that Batman suit. It looked functional, like believable body armor. But compare that to these outfits. the characters look like they just showed up at a Halloween party. Plus, there's a few moments in the trailers where some of the CGI looks pretty poor. Certainly not something you would expect from a movie with such a massive budget. It's funny because when it comes to these movies, the word budget almost feels like a misnomer. There's not an awful lot of budgeting going on here from what I can see. Given the wastefulness of Disney, production of these films seems to be about spending as much money as possible. I don't see an attempt to try to control costs, reduce spending, or even, heaven forfend, come under budget. Wouldn't that be amazing? There doesn't appear to be any real frugality here. Frugality. Is that a word? Frugality? Frugal? Frugality? It sounds like it should be a word. It sounds right. Hold on a second here. I want to check this. Frugality. Yes. Yes, it is. Frugality. The quality of being frugal. Right. Prudent economy. A prudent and sparing use or appropriation of anything. Frugality. And I knew it. That was a word. I knew it. I thought I was going insane there for a second. So clearly reshoots are among the biggest expenses of these movies. And reshoots probably aren't as much of a headache as they sound, because when you think about it, having to reshoot something means that it's like getting overtime in your job. I mean, the actors, the director, the producers, all the crew, everyone has to get paid again. So working on a movie that has lots of reshoots going on, it's probably a very desirable thing because you're getting a lot of work. So you're getting more money as a result. So the fact that these movies are so ridiculously overexpensive, these films they're all tax write-offs for the studios anyway, and they've got investors with deep pockets in some cases, so it just creates an industry and a culture of squandering money. But just think about what it says of Disney, that they're going to spend so much money on this film, and the end product is going to be just incredibly mediocre. Unreal. They could have taken that $274 million and they could have made a dozen independent movies, right? And given new writers and directors a chance to come up with new ideas. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. The Dave Cullen Show is made possible by you, my generous subscribers. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to my Subscribe star, linked below in the description box, and for a pledge of as little as $1 per month, you can help to keep the show going. I'm also doing one-to-one monthly subscriber chats. Thanks again. Take care.